right, it's now 10 minutes after 7. This is Morning Express, and it's time for us to look at the way it is. Now, just 3 days after the surprise turn of events on Friday when President Uhuru Kenyatta and NASA leader Raila Odinga held talks, it is now emerging that the handshake may have opened a new chapter for the country. But the meeting threw NASA core principles into a spin, accusing the NASA leader of sidelining them with the Harambee House deal. Now, one saw the handshake coming after a protracted electioneering period. What next for Kenya? Welcome to The Way It Is. And this morning, I am joined by Dr. Ojwang, who's the Dean at the African Nazarene University. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We also have Mark Bichachi, who is a political analyst, commentator, professor. Well, no pun intended, but we had that conversation off air. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. And of course, what's made headlines since Friday is the handshake between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. Let me start with you, Dr. Ojwang, on whether this is a handshake that you possibly may have foreseen. Did you think, or did it get you by surprise like it did most Kenyans?
It did. It did.
Get you by surprise?
But, yes. But one thing I'd said before is Raila knew the baby was dead.
The baby here being NASA?
Yeah, being presidency.
Okay.
When he didn't turn up for the presidential election. And so what he has been doing is managing the supporters, which for Raila supporter, you need to lower your expectation. And so it was just a matter of when, because he knew very well that this thing is going nowhere. And so just in that dilemma, to re-energize himself and to prop up himself for 2022 for whatever and be relevant, he had to again jump into the headlines through this means.
Do you think that dilutes the aggressive, vocal Raila that we know by virtue of the fact he was very categorical and very vocal on his criticism against Jubilee and even Uhuru Kenyatta in person? But now with the handshake, does that dilute his aggressiveness towards his agenda?
It will, but you know Raila has a lot of goodwill. And therefore, people will say, look at what he did to Moi. He broke it from inside out. So he will come with some analogies. But I think so far, he has cut and run openly without philosophizing the whole thing. He has cut and run. He has cut from NASA and run to embrace the reality of the day. So within that, there is the personal interest, there is his political career, and there could be also the national interest embedded in there.
All right. Mark, did it get you by surprise, or did you foresee it coming?
Weirdly, when Raila Odinga decided not to swear himself in December, I expected this to have happened in December. But it did catch me by surprise, because it did seem indeed like the die had been cast and the cement had become stone. Yes, it had set. And I didn't expect this. However, the surprising thing is, even as we discuss as if Raila cut and ran, he didn't quite cut a deal, which is very interesting. The document that they came up with was a document for Kenya. It was not a document for them. It was a document where Uhuru is making it part of his legacy that is going to leave a transformed nation, a re-engineered nation, a reimagined nation. And the same thing for Raila Odinga, which is the kind of conversation, if you remember, we were talking about the whole of December when we were talking about a conversation about the people versus a conversation about positions. And that is what has happened. Now, at the same time, it has rejuvenated Raila Odinga's profile in one key manner. He has rejuvenated himself as a statesman, as someone who is willing to abandon political ambition for the sake of the nation. Now, what he can do with that political capital is pretty much everything. He can possibly run again in 2022. He can possibly position himself to be the Mandela of this nation. He can possibly decide to be like Kofi Annan, an ambassador at large, if you will. So the reinvention of Raila Odinga is amazing. But the legacy of Uhuru Kenyatta is equally amazing because now he's got to do the big four while uniting the country.
All right. Dr. Juang, do you think that this is a win-win situation for the political players and Kenyans as a whole? Because like Mark mentions, there is now the legacy for Uhuru Kenyatta, which of course many would imagine has to be a legacy that is positive. There has to be one thing that we'd expect is unity, a more unified country, and a country that is possibly better placed economically. But for Raila, there is the fight for justice that he has always championed, and that has remained his brand, as it were. Is it a win-win situation, do you think?
It is going to come Kenyans, but Kenyans are good at producing good documents, and I believe it's another misstep in the unfortunate events of Kenya. Any talk in Nairobi, there's a lot of wakora in Nairobi. It is a dress rehearsal for 2022. There is no talk that can happen in Nairobi within politicians, even if you bring Mudavadi, even if you bring pastors in Nairobi, as if pastors in Nairobi are the ones who pray more than the rural. My idea was this: if there was to be a genuine dialogue, let us be true to the Constitution. There is devolution. Let everybody go talk in their counties. Within the MCAs, let it come from the county. Then we have regional blocks blocking those counties. So we have Nairobi region, we have Pwani region. Then when we meet at the national, we are meeting with an agenda that is generated from the ground, and it is we have intergovernmental relation agency. Then there now CS can come, commissioners can come, whatever need to be taken to parliament can be taken, whatever need to be done with the executive can be taken. But any time you have a dialogue in that house called Bomas, what you'll be seeing is political interest. And so whether we bring in and we make this dialogue bigger, there is no Kenya in there.
But isn't the nation built on political interest such that through that political alignment now you're able to get power? I mean, I even watched, I think it was Charity Ngilu who mentioned and said that Jubilee has their 4-point agenda, but it seems to be joining with hers. In other words, she was saying that now she's willing to work with Jubilee. But isn't that what politics is about? Working with the those that favor your agenda for the people.
Okay, no, people can benefit, but if they benefit, it's coincidental. The main architecture and the politics of the day and the succession become very important in Nairobi. Anytime you are having this dialogue within parties. But if you went to the rural, because everybody is coming from a county, and people sat in their counties, with the MCS, generated this thing. It was passed in each county assembly. Then it came to the national. Then you will now start having what people want. But if you took this dialogue there, and you have the politicians, and you have the NGOs who are even more politicians than politicians, and you have the churches, which also are very much politically sensitive, what you'll have there is, yes, a political negotiation and a political settlement. That's what we have been having. That is why after Kofi Annan, we had very good documents. It prompted Raila and gave us some peace, but the constitutionalism was not developed in Kenya. So the constitution was not given legs to walk in. It remained an impotent document that is still there on paper. If the talk we should have is, why is this constitution not working? If the constitution is saying no ministry should have more than 20%, why is there a problem? That talk can be done when you divorce or as much as possible manage the political expectations.
All right, Mark, let's interrogate the objective. What do you think is Raila's objective in this particular case? Because at the end of the day, there is his political career, but at the same time, there is his supporters and the agenda that he has carried for Kenya.
I would like to disagree with the good doctor here for the simple reason. Kenya is classically pessimists. We are permanently glass empty people. That's how we think.
That's our perception.
However, one of the things that we must agree about the handshake that happened on Friday is that for the first time, two leaders have sat down and come up with a document that is all-inclusive in terms of the issues we want to deal with as Kenyans. It deals with tribalism, it deals with electoral cycles, it deals with chaos, it deals with the national psyche, it deals with devolution, it deals with all of these things. And it is not a document that stands alone. It ends by saying that they are forming a committee to make this a reality. Now, let me tell you the truth. I know that we want to believe that the will of the people is what drives a nation. The truth of the matter, every great nation has stood on a name. America has stood on Abraham Lincoln. Okay? And that name has stood the test of time. Nelson Mandela and de Klerk stand out in South Africa. In Tanzania, you've got Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. In Ghana, you've got their first president. The fact of the matter is this, that you do need a leader to step up and do that which is considered unpopular. Why is it unpopular? Because according to the masses, what should have happened if you are a Jubilee supporter is Uhuru should never have shaken the hand of your mortal enemy. And if you are in NASA, then Raila betrayed you by saying, you know what, let us recognize the president and decide to work with him. But the reality of the matter is you must ask yourself, did I want the cake or did I want the baker? If the baker changed, but I got the same cake, then I should be okay. And that's the problem. The betrayal that is felt here is the betrayal where someone has 4 wives and one wife decides they will not eat the food because they did not participate in the cutting of onions. That cannot be the case in this particular case. We must come together as a nation and agree that the document that was produced is conclusive. A cake has been baked. Now, whether we will criticize it and say we like pink more than red, or we wanted it yellow more than green, those are details. What we have now, for the first time, by the way, in a very long time, we have an opportunity to discuss conclusively the issues of our nation. And it does not matter whether it is top-down or down-up. It does not matter. The fact is, we would have come to this very same conclusion. And the fact that the conclusion has been done, it behooves us as a nation to participate to create our own future.
All right, Dr. Ojwang, do you agree that this is an opportunity, and maybe also Raila is viewing this as one way of consolidating his fight for justice, which might otherwise be lost?
Yeah, absolutely. He's taking a rest. And strategically.
Arrest or a risk?
Both, but he's taking a rest from maybe pushing in terms of dissent and maybe now talking. And then so it's a rest in that point that he has changed the tact. And what I'm saying, I'm not saying that the handshake and the fertile ground that that handshake creates for a real opportunity for dialogue is not important. What I'm saying is that the real dialogue and the earnest will have just come after that goodwill. But then, how should it proceed? The way it should proceed is now what I'm saying, that now that the weapons are buried, and then the swords are turned into the plow and whatever, then now let us go back to our counties and talk. But if we put it in Bomas, and if we put it in Nairobi, then there is so much interest, and the politics of the day could easily swallow the agenda for Kenyans. That's all I'm saying. But you're asking, is it a retreat? Is it I think that it is both. You see, a move can both be politically good, good for the nation, at the same time good for you, even spiritually, and even socially. And then there is probably an element of exhaustion. And that's why I'm saying it is a strategy that now, rather than being combatant, you can catch a lot of with honey than vinegar. And so let me negotiate It's the U.S. president that is talking about that said we shouldn't be afraid to negotiate, but we should negotiate from fear. So negotiation is good.
It's necessary.
Talking to good. Country should always be negotiating. It's part of the self-determination and the internal self-determination, reaccessing. Why is this? You know, we have never even done evaluation. Making a document is the easiest part. We have never sat and said, is this constitution working? And if it's not working, what is the problem? So this will give us all those chances. But the way this is managed is therefore very important, because now the like of Kalonzo and Mudavadi and Wetangula feel the process is rushed, feel that they were left behind and probably betrayed, if they could say that, which also they need to be shown that you are as important as
yeah. All right, I'll come to the other principles in just a bit, but Mark, maybe just to get from you, do you think from this, because one of the things obviously it tells us is that Raila has changed tactic completely, and could this be possibly an admission, silently though, that maybe presidency may not be the only way for him to push his agenda, and maybe now try and work with the powers that be?
It was the only realization that he would ever come to. The reality of the matter is when he made the tactical blunder of pulling out of the October 26th election, and Judge Mativo swiftly put Ekuru Okot on the ticket. It was a tactical blunder. It was too late in the day to mount a campaign. It was too late in the day to change his mind. And from that point, he was locked out. And further, when the opportunities were missed to create an environment where, quote unquote, Kenya would have been ungovernable, his economic sabotage failed. His swearing in proved to have less gravitas. In fact, the only person it seems to have impacted is our dear friend Miguna, who's now the roaming ambassador, self-declared ambassador of NRM. That's the only person who.
And now, of course, the future of NRM is very flighty right now.
There's no resistance. What are you resisting now?
There's handshakes.
There's handshakes. And therefore, the reality of the matter, and I said this before, that the only realization is to realize that if you can go to Uhuru Kenyatta and somehow get your agenda done, not by political power, but by political influence, which, by the way, Raila Odinga has by the spadeful, and use that to deliver what you promised to your people. You see, just because you are out of office does not make you not a leader. You understand?
You're relevant. You're
still relevant. And therefore, it's that realization that he can play an impactful role in the next 5 years of Kenya's history. And can you imagine if they're able to just deliver on one thing, to remove the tensions around elections? If they're able to do that, then they will have dealt with tribalism. And if you deal with tribalism, simultaneously you deal with corruption, because the cover of corruption is always our man, our person. And the reality of the matter, if they can just reimagine what it is to do politics in this country, then he can rest easy knowing that his name is going to go down in history as a man who indeed changed this nation for over 3 decades of his life. And that's really what is important. Kenya has an opportunity. Let's not waste it around bickering. And the truth of the matter is this. You know, we need to understand that if you read the Bible, any organization that had more than one head was a beast. Okay? So we must recognize that NASA was headed by Raila Odinga. These other three are not core principles. Let's not lie to each other. Even in the structure, had they one power, one would have been a chief minister, the other one would be deputy president. There was no equal. Okay? So we must understand that this was a meeting between the real principles of both formations. And therefore, we must respect that since we gave Raila the ticket, let's respect his decision. And then let's have these grassroots conversations after.
All right, Dr. Juang, where does that leave the other three principles? And now Mark says they're not principles, so I don't know what he wants to call them. Let me call them partners. So where does that leave the other three partners, especially given, as much as Raila is the leader, and that there was no doubt about that. And there was even debate as to whether this was NASA or it was just ODM with, you know, smaller brothers. But where does that leave the other partners, given especially that they feel left out right now? They were not involved in this negotiation. They've basically been played a card, as it were.
Right. Well, if there are no principal, let's call them headmasters.
And what does that make Raila? The principal.
So, yeah, it's not looking good for them because Raila has pulled a fast one on them. That is the truth. And of course, everybody knew the weight of Raila in there, and then that's why they even accepted to support him and be his arm bearers. They were. And they did bear his arms throughout the election. Now, what, in my view, they are left vulnerable. They are left a little bit disappointed. And what that could mean, they are a very easy target. They are low-hanging fruit for Deputy President Ruto. What happened when Raila joined hand with Kibaki was that all his members of Pentagon ended up with Uhuru. Ngilu, Balala, Ruto. So that is what is going to happen. These people, Raila has been given his dignity, which I think Jubilee have won in this scheme very well, because they have realized that Raila will not leave because you have pushed him. Raila will not leave because you are so combatant and you have fiercely bruised him. No, he will shake off the dust and fight you. But if you give him his dignity, then you will almost find a way of almost overwhelming him. And so that's what they're doing. They're giving him his dignity. He is now more likely to even exit because he's at the peak and he has put down his weapon. Now, for these other principles, they're very vulnerable. You know, Deputy President have always been looking as if he can get votes from Luya. Now, this is the opportunity. Raila have kind of left you dry. Now, Mudavadi, Wetangula, I'm here for you. And that could be an opportunity. Kalonzo, you know very well that you are not weak. People think you are weak, but you are not weak. That will be how I'm imagining how the talk will go. And you know you are a very strong person. Canvas are many. Now, this is an opportunity for you to come in and enter my rest, so to speak. So, in that process, it has left these other principles reachable very easily. All they will need to do is somebody to go and bring them home, and they say, how what ni viongozi? After all, and Kenya is bigger. You know, with Kenya is bigger, you can do anything. I can even run over your car and say, Kenya is bigger than your car, my brother. So that is an absolution for almost every act.
All right, and we're going to take a short break right now. But when we come back, we'd also like to weigh in and see where does that leave the opposition. Raila Odinga, of course, has been seen as a very strong, very vocal opposition leader who is not afraid to call out things, especially when they go wrong. So where does that leave the opposition if Raila Odinga now is as is expected, possibly in government, so to speak? That's all coming up right here on The Way It Is. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
This is KTN News.